One question that we had asked again recently and comes up all the time from the requesting party, often the plaintiffs, is, well, this assumption that they're meaning well and maybe incompetent, that's good as far as it goes, but I think there's probably been intentional destruction or obfuscation of data. What can the attorney do when they think this is a possibility?
Well, first of all, if they've done their job well, they've closed some of those ignorance doors. The, oh, gee, I didn't know you intended for us to keep that kind of all shucks that has been used historically when someone goes into court. Judge, we didn't know that they expected us to stop our deletion processes or interrupt our rotation of backup tapes, heaven forbid, or that they wanted social networking or phones or what have you. So we continued doing business as usual because that request was not communicated to us clearly. And this is where it becomes very hard for plaintiff's counsel. On the one hand, they so want to serve the form letter. And I'm guilty of having years ago drafted something in an article that was called, in a tongue-in-cheek way, the perfect preservation letter, speaking of what it is you as plaintiff's counsel, as requesting party, need to send to your opponent upon your entry in the case or before the filing of a lawsuit that says, hey, I'm going to need these things. This is material. You need to act to preserve it. And by the way, here's the forms in which we need it preserved, and here's some ways that we think are acceptable, effective, and cost-effective ways to preserve it. On the one hand, you want the omnibus, keep everything in every form, which is ridiculous, disproportionate, and it might as well be thrown away. On the other hand, there's this intense fear that if you fail to say Simon Says about something, that is an invitation for it to be destroyed or hidden. The answer there is specificity is essential for those things which the plaintiff's lawyer knows or should have been able to anticipate are likely to be the most key information. I mean, if it's a wage and hour dispute case and you don't ask for the information stored in their wage and hour or payroll systems, you're not thinking. You probably shouldn't be handling wage and hour litigation. And so you need to be specific. And the saving grace is that the expression of one thing is not necessarily the exclusion of all others. The duty to preserve is not created by the notice letter from the requesting party. It's created by the common law. It's created automatically on the anticipation of litigation by the producing party. What you are doing when you send a well-crafted preservation letter is you are closing the door for the other side to say, that never occurred to me. I didn't think they wanted that. And that makes it much harder down the line for them to claim surprise or unreasonableness, because if it was asked for in the beginning and no complaint was made about the effort, burden, cost, etc., to act to preserve it, then it is reasonable for the requesting party to rely upon the other side and assume that absent an objection or absent a specific information that the work would not be done, that it would be done in good faith and with reasonable diligence. This is something that plaintiff's lawyers do too little. They either use a form that kind of sucks, pardon me using technical language there, and they just don't think about it, or they blow it off altogether. And here again, you have to be thinking ahead. You're the captain of the ship. You're creating this litigation as the plaintiff's lawyer. You have a moral, ethical, and professional duty to be thinking down the chessboard as to what you're going to need and be closing the avenues of obfuscation and destruction and error on the part of your opponent. It's not that hard to do with a little forethought and a little careful drafting and a little willingness to not just shove out the same old form you've been using since the end of the Second World War.
If you're acting as a special master in a case and somebody brings to you allegations of spoliation, intentional destruction, sandbagging, whatever, what what is it you want to see to get that to the level where you would consider it?
Well, I want to see several things, and I have to say I really haven't really thought that one through, so I'm going to be kind of shooting from the hip here. I want to see some good cause. I mean, again, more than a mere suspicion. It's one thing in a dialogue to have it raise suspicion, and that suspicion either poo-pooed or allayed by a response from counsel. But that's lawyer talk, and it may satisfy the lawyers, but it doesn't really create much of a record if something wasn't accurate down the line or something needs to be addressed much later on appeal. Well, I want to make a record. I want to understand the sound factual basis for the suspicion. I want, ideally, evidence of a gap or an omission, either the recollection of the plaintiff if they were a former employee, or something in the context, in the content of what has been produced that demonstrates an obvious gap. I want some testimony, either from someone within the producing party's entity or from an outside expert or consultant that adds credence to the suspicion based on experience or on particularized knowledge of the data or the system. Don't just tell me I think something's wrong. Show me why it is truly wrong. Because this stuff isn't free and it doesn't happen instantly. And so when I send somebody back to talk to people, gather information, restore data, collect data, that's not free. And I have to have a reason to do it more than a vague, unformed suspicion of some party who simply doesn't trust the other side, either because they've dealt with them for a while and there's bad blood or what have you. Everybody starts even unless it's been sent to me by the court for some kind of established misbehavior or presumed misbehavior. I'm not sure if I've answered your question. There are more moving parts to it than that, Gene. But mainly, I want somebody to come and give me more than suspicion. Give me evidence. I'm all about the evidence. I'm about being able to get to it in discovery, and I'm certainly about requiring it before I'm going to make people spend substantial amounts of time and money just because you don't think they might have done a good job.
I think that's just excellent on kind of taking into account the different considerations that one should go through in both making these kind of allegations, defending them, and looking at them if you were called to make a determination of it. So I understand this can have to be in just generality because every particular case has its own particular circumstances.
Some of this hinges on credibility too. Again, where I've dealt with one side and they've shown me they know what they're talking about, they've done their homework, they've used publicly available resources to research the system used by the producing party, and they've shown me perhaps in the past that when they've raised objection, there was more than smoke, there was fire. That person, that litigant, starts with some credibility. And I'm not going to demand as much from them because they've shown me that when they express doubts, those doubts have merit. So that's when I get back to that confidence, that bringing forward surefire aces, flushes, and straights misconduct to establish that you can be trusted for not only your veracity but your competence. That goes a long way.
An excellent point and ties back in on just developing your credibility along with your technical competence and your case all at the same time. These are not separate items.